Thank you so much. So this is just our neighborhood that was assigned to us, and this would normally be kind of like a guided walk that would have like audio, but a la COVID, we ended up making ours a little bit more immersive, less physically and more aesthetically. So you'll have some slides and you'll have some pictures, as opposed to normally it's just audio that would be played. So this is just a map that would give your user an idea of what this would look like.
Yeah, so as we're like thinking about this project, we're trying to see like, would it be easier for folks to walk? So our kind of like capstone project or our part walk is a mixture of like walking, taking public transportation, kind of like getting, you know, the lay of the land of the neighborhood and understanding like how transportation has affected accessibility to certain parts of the neighborhood and also like who gets access to these areas. So for example, your first stop is kind of the northernmost part of Greenpoint. This is the New Heart Superfund site at 280 Franklin Street. So this is a major plastics company that has just basically was declared as a state Superfund site. So there's a lot of like back and forth between what's going to happen with the future of this property. Jimmy, if you can go to the next slide. So under the Superfund site, there's a large kind of plume of toxins. So kind of like phthalates and legacy toxins that have been there since the neighborhood's very heavy industrial past. It's only recent that Greenpoint has been slated as kind of like the new future of New York City, as in sense of like the like revitalizing the waterfront, because I know waterfront property has been really popular, especially in neighborhoods like Greenpoint, Williamsburg, where I reside, and Lower East Side. So, for example, kind of like tying with Greenpoint, this is like underneath this Superfund site. They do want to plan, the school construction authority plans to build a school over this or near the area, but a lot of like grassroots of kind of like opposition has been against building a school over here due to the fact that the toxins under New Heart are starting to leak and migrate towards other areas of the neighborhood. You can go to the next one.
All right, cool. So this is, you'll notice this for the rhythm of display. We have one that just shows directions of like how someone would get to this stop. And then we have like a more in-depth slide that actually gives some of the details. So feel free to advance to the next one, please. Okay, cool. So this is, we have a couple of themes present throughout the pod walk. One of the big ones, in particular, one that I really got excited about, or at least interested in, was housing and how housing affordability, new construction, retrofits, etc., how those will impact the future of Greenpoint. So this is 5 Blue Slip. You saw a photo on the outside. It's new construction. I want to say it was constructed in like 2015, 2016, so pretty recent. And it is listed as affordable housing through New York City. And also, as you'll see later, there's a great diversity in what affordable housing actually means, especially when it is privately owned. So when it's not NYCHA housing, but it is considered affordable. So we have the range here for someone to apply for a studio. Their taxable income has to be between $14,000 and $38,000 per year. So that is, in my opinion, and as the audio for the slide will show, is or would show, is definitely realistic. And then also for a 4-person household. So let's say you have 2 parents and 2 children, and then you're applying for a 2-bedroom, your total household income would be between $18,000 and $54,000. So 5 Blue Slip is essentially an example of positive, realistic, affordable housing that is both enjoyable to live in and actually affordable. All right, cool. So this is the Greenpoint Design and Manufacturing Center. This is near the water. It's stop number 3, and I think we can just head to the next one. Cool. So here we have the inside. That's just a little image that I pulled from their website. So the Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center was originally a factory. It had clients including the US Navy, and starting way back in colonial times, this specific parcel of land has been used for many different purposes, which is essentially another theme that's present throughout the pod walk, is how valuable urban land is and how it's continually repurposed depending on who holds power or who does not hold power in the city. So now we see it being used more recently within the last 5 to 10 years as sort of an artisan hub. My hope that you'll take my takeaway from this image ideally is that you see that it's kind of trendy, it's youthful, it's creative. People are doing, it seems like there's an architecture firm there. People are doing modeling. It seems like maybe these people are being paid moderately well. Maybe they're working for clients in other countries, etc. These people hold some kind of cultural capital. So the building was repurposed in '94, and it now houses 75 small businesses and artist studios. So this site is just one of the many sites in the US, especially in cities, that are being flipped to meet the interests of a new wave of city dwellers. And as cities become more desirable, these once industrial sites are being transformed to things such as breweries, artist studios, offices for small space for small businesses or startups, or even restaurants. And this up, I just want to bring the theme in again, highlights this kind of ongoing opposition that we see throughout Greenpoint's history, which is one of larger manufacturing and then smaller businesses.
So this is the Newtown Creek Nature Walk. It was an installation put in by the Newtown Creek Alliance, or supported by it, in tandem with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. So, Professor Robert, I apologize, I thought that was Jimmy controlling the slides, but can you go to the next slide? So, Nature Walk, this is kind of a map showing, in a sense, the different stops within the Nature Walk, and kind of speaks to the environmental history from the beginning of colonialism to the kind of present day, and how that ties into the city's neighborhood, city's identity. So the vessel is kind of calling back to the neighborhood's original history, because Newtown Creek used to be an area known for a lot of boating, kind of like shipbuilders, and the reason why Greenpoint was so kind of valuable in the sense of land was that a lot of shipbuilders were starting to escape Manhattan due to high prices, and also the growing economy in Brooklyn, and also how rich in natural resource capital that Brooklyn was during at the time. You can go to the next slide. And so the Sandstone Circles was kind of just, in a sense, kind of, the Sandstone Circles each have a different indigenous name tied to it, to different aspects of the neighborhood's history, different natural features. And as we all know, majority of New York City, well, I would say all 5 boroughs are on top of Lenape land. So that's also one thing to notice and acknowledge about the history of Greenpoint, especially. And the watershed bollard is kind of an etching of the neighborhood's watershed, topographically and geographically. And the use of it is that actually when it rains, which I would recommend everybody go see this when it rains, when it rains, the rainfall kind of mimics how much water and how the water moves throughout Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And also that our Greenpoint, Brooklyn is adjacent to the New York City, New Jersey, Harbor estuary, which is a very important part of New York City's identity as a coastal city, and also Greenpoint's identity as a neighborhood that's near such a powerful resource. And lastly, this is Nature Creek Well Path. So this is kind of in a sense that Newtown Creek was designated as a SIMA, which is Significant Industrial Maritime Area. So the Newtown Creek Alliance, which is a community organization that's based within the heart of Greenpoint, specifically the Newtown Creek side of Greenpoint, kind of advocates this designation as a support for kind of building working community connections, and also helping the working class stay within Brooklyn. Because Greenpoint, Brooklyn, as gentrification, especially in tandem with green space gentrification, kind of starts to push out a lot of working class communities who can't afford the rents, or the changing landscape forces them to be pushed out. And also, it's named after Whale Creek. Whale Creek is a small inlet near the mouth of Newtown Creek, which the path overlooks. And it was named after because whalers back during the more industrial days used to bring whales in for oil production.
Cool. All right. So we also had two other group members who are not on the call. So I'll be speaking for one of them, Malak. She is the person that did most of the research for this, but just go ahead and I will speak on her behalf.
Oh, do you want me to speak, Jim?
No, I can speak, just if we could get the next slide, please. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so the fifth stop on the tour is the Newtown Creek Alliance, as we just mentioned, expanded into the Kingsland Wildflower Community Center. So this organization came to be in 1997 when Greenpoint community members gathered to begin talking and addressing the issues that were visibly that were present in many different senses, whether they be sight, smell, or otherwise, in Newtown Creek. So one of the large issues in Newtown Creek and throughout Brooklyn, throughout New York, in Greenpoint in particular, have been CSOs, otherwise known as combined sewer overflows. Combined sewer overflows are one of the many sources of pollution impacting Newtown Creek, but they are one of the most easily observed in particular. So weather events that produce at least 1/10 of an inch of rainfall, aka nearly every time that it rains, they will easily overwhelm the sewer system and send up to 1.2 billion gallons of untreated sewage and stormwater into the creek each year. So a total of 1.2 billion gallons of untreated sewage and stormwater are being put into this place where people are now walking right next to it. Newtown Creek also contains one of the largest oil spills, which was connected to ExxonMobil, one of the largest oil spills in American history, where 30 million gallons of oil was spilled. In 2004, Newtown Creek Alliance, alongside with the group Riverkeeper and council member David Yasaki's office, they filed a lawsuit against ExxonMobil. And resultingly, in 2010, the lawsuit did reach a settlement where $19.5 million in community benefit money was awarded to the residents of Greenpoint, specifically to use for environmental programs, which was entitled the Greenpoint Community Environmental Benefit Fund. So this fund was used to for a number of different projects, namely environmental education and green infrastructure. So Newtown Creek Alliance and a few other smaller groups, they received a grant that was nearly $1 million taken from that $19.5 million pool. And they installed this multi-level bird-friendly intensive green roof. Go back one. Okay, thank you. So the reason that this green roof is so impressive is that it is able to reduce that stormwater runoff that I just spoke about. It also creates a wildlife corridor for birds and insects, and it also serves as an outdoor education classroom, which educates, empowers, and enables the next generation of folks of residents in particular, to know what to look for in their neighborhood. So the roof was planted with biologically diverse native plant species and is regularly monitored to assess the health of the green roof's biodiversity. I think that's all I'm going to say about this slide. We have a little bit more, but in respect to time.
So this is Penny Bridge, was the sixth stop of the Greenpoint Podwalk tour. And this was basically more in a sense, Penny Bridge, which there used to be a bridge there, but I'll get into that more into the next slide. But this is technically the closest you can get to the oil spill that still exists near Greenpoint and parts of Williamsburg. Particularly, like, you can still see the oil sheen, or this is closest that gets to the point of where the oil spill was first discovered. So Penny Bridge was named after a bridge that used to be near, well, kind of like downriver from the well-known Kosciuszko Bridge, I believe it is, or don't quote me on that because I forgot what bridge was near there, but it used to connect Sunnyside, Queens, and Greenpoint, Brooklyn. But it was also named Penny Bridge because you had to pay a penny to get across during more like industrial, like, and colonial times. So after that bridge was taken out, they later developed the, I believe, the Kosciuszko Bridge, or the bridge as the Brooklyn Queens Expressway. Still trying to figure out what bridge that was. But also, as you can see here with the image here, The ground oil plume as a result of Exxon spill reaches 55 acres into Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and more so starting to leach, kind of not leach, but migrate towards Williamsburg, but more the industrial side of it also. So also to speak to that, even though Newtown Creek has suffered this major egregious environmental violent act, there's also still major fossil fuel production along the Newtown Creek, both on the Queens side and the Brooklyn Greenpoint side. And within 1 mile of Newtown Creek, there exists hundreds of brownfield sites, which are also relics of industrial past, which produce non-point and point source pollution, which kind of does pose not a great healthy benefit to most of the working class residents who live on that side, as opposed to the East River side, which is more gentrified and more made for the new kind of like wave of people, not wave of people, new wave of residents coming in.
All right, I can grab this one. Also, just time check for us, Adam. We're at 17 over 20 minutes. So I'm on Signer McGolrick Park. This is essentially the largest green space in Brooklyn. I'm not going to speak too much about it to respect our time, but essentially, Monsignor McGolrick was someone who came from a military background and ultimately and also had a religious involvement with the community all throughout northern Brooklyn, and essentially built up a lot of what we know as now Greenpoint. So let's just go to the next slide. And these are some images of the inside, and we can just move on. Okay, so this is the Auto in Greenpoint. It is a modern apartment building, one of the most recent and largest. It's 8 stories tall. Some of the things that might attract you about it include 24/7 parking, a gym, a library, a garden, a game room, a rooftop lounge, including a pool, hot tub, and private barbecue grills, as well as views of the Manhattan skyline. And there are about 200 units in total. 20% or about 60 of the units are reserved as quote unquote affordable housing, which are available through a housing lottery. In order to apply for this affordable housing, applicants must have an income between $46,000 and $135,000. Again, so essentially what we're trying to say here is that people can apply for affordable housing even when they are making $130,000 a year. And if we could just get the next slide. The average rent in one of these designated affordable units is $15,500. This is slightly below market rate, but it is still nearly double the average rent at 5 Blue Slips. So clearly this building is less accessible than 5 Blue Slip. And then we have some light data analysis pulled from Open Data NYC, which talk about how in only 8 years, rent prices have increased by nearly 30%, and buying a home became 4 times more expensive. And that's all for this slide. Okay, so this is Dollar Up. This is an Eastern European grocery store. It's located on Manhattan Avenue, which is like the main strip, if you may. And the reason that we have this included is we wanted to acknowledge the large Polish hold that that is present in Greenpoint at the moment, and that we're seeing less and less of as the area becomes more expensive. And these are just some images from inside. Adam, you want to take us home on the last one?
So this is the Greenpoint Library Environmental Education Center, which when we were doing this research or capstone to develop the pod walk, it was still under construction. But as of recently, since I've taken a quick walk around Greenpoint, it's open actually, but I'm not sure it's open to the public due to COVID. But this received funding. Well, the original library was here received funding from the GCE fund, which is the Greenpoint Community Environmental Fund, I believe, or Compensation Fund. And if Professor Rogan, don't you mind going to the next slide? And this library was renovated using the funds from the GCE to kind of like develop it as both a community space in the sense of a environmental education center, and also as a library for the young populations and also older populations who live within the area. So the Greenpoint Library Educational Center Greenpoint Library Environmental Education Center represents a possible future for Greenpoint to be a sustainable model for the rest of New York City. Meaning, as New York City, as Greenpoint is struggling with these different identities, these sustainable solutions that are being created due to the fund can help the city kind of decide what projects they want to invest in to kind of meet their goals for a sustainable city. Center's design features Center's design features produce huge environmental benefits for the surrounding community. Example, CSO mitigation, which we did talk about as being a major problem within Greenpoint. And it would do so through kind of like rain gardens and also kind of like living infrastructure or living green infrastructure that would absorb the excess water. Because again, since CSOs are mostly triggered by rainfall that's more than tenth of an inch. Thank you, Professor Boger. And also it's strengthened community resilience to accessibly acknowledge about Greenpoint's environmental history, which is kind of the takeaway of both this pod walk and the last stop. This is why we put the last stop as the Greenpoint Library Environmental Education Center, because it kind of represents a positive future for Greenpoint, and how if you invest in your communities will invest in itself and kind of develop this kind of like network within itself that will most likely create more stewardship of the neighborhood. And lastly, this is just the last stop, kind of a thank you to the users of the pod walk, and kind of like, you know, thanking them for coming on this trip, and linking the Urban Sustainability Program at Brooklyn College and also Newtown Creek Alliance, which was our community partner. And also shout out to Lisa Bloodgood, who was exceptionally great at helping us kind of figure out the ins and outs of neighborhood's history. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, or please email me. I'll drop my email in the chat.
Thank you, Adam and Jimmy. Wonderful. If you want to post questions in the chat room, and they will answer them. For time's sake, right now, we're going to move on to the next presentation. As I said, some students have limited time availability, so we want to make sure all the students have the ability to present their work. So I'm going to move forward, and the next presentation we have is on e-commerce, presentation is going on right now. So Emily and let's see, Sunny, I'm going to make you co-host. And I can share the screen and show your presentation, or you can. I'll leave that up to you. You tell me what you want to do.
I can share the
presentation.
presentation.
Let me find Emily. Okay. Emily, where are you so that I can share?
I think you.
Did I give you sharing privileges?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and I got Sunny. Okay, so the show is yours. Go right ahead and start.
All right, I'll pull it up. Sorry, one moment. Okay. Can everyone see it?
Yes, at least I can see it.
Looks good.
Perfect. So my name is Emily Riera, and I've been working with Sunny Fang and RPA in Brooklyn College to do a scoping study on the e-commerce impacts on the New York City area.
So we've been working with the Regional Planning Association, which is a non-for-profit organization that focuses primarily on the tri-state region. But for this study, we were looking at more specifically the New York City area. And so our study focused on the impacts of e-commerce on urban areas, which is why we chose New York City. And so through this research process, we were tracking trends about how e-commerce interacted with different sectors of transportation, sustainability, community, land use, and economy and finance. So we looked through various aspects of media, such as news articles and community input to formulate our research.
So the sections that I researched were economy and finance and transportation. Some noted trends that I found through economy and finance were the obvious tax incentives for Amazon and e-commerce giants' presence in cities in terms of distribution centers, warehouses and stuff like that. Promised employment opportunities that often were insecure or without workplace protection or financial protection. Again, in terms of distribution centers and warehousing jobs that were brought to cities by e-commerce giants, as well as an increase in real estate demands for warehousing and industrial spaces in the New York City area. I'm also going to talk about at the end some small companies and startups that have sort of arisen out of the e-commerce market that attempt to address and combat waste issues, specifically packaging. So in terms of tax incentives, city and state governments have offered tax incentives, tax waivers to Amazon and other e-commerce giants on the promise that they will sort of create jobs and invigorate the local economy. As we can see with the Amazon HQ2 initiatives in Queens, there was fierce competition between many states as to who could offer the best deal. I noted here that the top contending cities offered anywhere between $2 billion and $8.5 billion in tax credits, subsidies, things like that to Amazon for them to build their HQ2 in the city and create those jobs that they promised. A report done by the Americans for Tax Fairness in 2014 also discussed Walmart and their profit of nearly $7.8 billion per year due to federal subsidies and tax breaks. When it comes to public finance, though, Amazon and large corporations are notoriously quiet about their financial dealings. This part of the research was a little bit difficult. The second trend, employment instability and lack of safety. I'm sure we've all read numerous articles about this. Warehousing employees are often subject to very unsafe conditions, as well as a greater chance of pollution exposure if they live in the area where these warehouses and distribution centers are. These employment opportunities also tend to be placed in more rural areas near waterways, places that are harder to get to. In New York City, an example is, on the edge of the city, or in the Bronx, places that people who mostly rely on public transportation may have a harder time getting to. Studies in 2019 using data from over 150 Amazon warehouses state that Amazon fulfillment centers recorded 14,000 serious injuries requiring days off or job restrictions for those employees, an overall rate of 7.7 serious injuries per 100 employees was 33% higher than previously in 2016. They just have notoriously high rates for employee injuries on the job. So also an introduction of warehousing jobs and industrial jobs in an area can overshadow or displace local job opportunities. Often if there's an existing industrial market, Amazon or some sort of e-commerce giant will come in and kind of displace them. In terms of real estate demands for industrial space, in the last decade or so, there's been a noted increase, obviously, as industrial spaces are needed for e-commerce operations. Prior to the boom of the e-commerce market, warehousing spaces were, not so much in demand and were often renovated or used as office spaces or even housing, but definitely a lot cheaper than they were now. The Wall Street Journal notes that warehouse sales during the first 9 months of the year reached almost 1.7 billion, which is almost double than it was 5 years ago or so. Not only in these sites in demand, there's also a big market for renovating them to meet the technological needs of production. Excuse me. Okay, Sunny.
So in terms of community impacts of e-commerce, I'm sure you all have seen as COVID-19 hit New York City, most people were forced to stay indoors. And so a lot of people turned to e-commerce as a way to safely get like groceries, packages, anything that you might need. And so this meant that the number of packages delivered every day within New York City increased to approximately 2.4 million packages a day. And originally e-commerce was on the rise before the pandemic, but the entire process expedited the process. So people who previously, liked shopping online transformed to consumer habits where they were shopping online almost every day, and like a record number of the population like started to like actually go into the whole like e-commerce trend because it's easy, it's convenient. And this isn't just within Amazon, it's within services like Uber Eats, Postmates, Instacart. And so hence we see things like daily grocery deliveries being more than doubled, and restaurant and like food services in order to stay afloat. They've started to rely more on like delivery services through these like instant like eating apps, and household goods through like Walmart, Amazon, Target, Instacart have jumped by 24%. And so like over the course of the pandemic, to sort of match the demand of consumers for e-commerce, Amazon has purchased at least 90 warehouses within New York City, and like in total has at least 12 warehouses within all 5 boroughs. And the impacts of this are that because everyone's relying so much on their computers to buy things, a lot of New York City small businesses like brick and mortar stores, primarily in like huge shopping districts, like I'm sure you guys have all seen that like a lot of the stores in your community didn't make it through the pandemic because lack of foot traffic means that they didn't really have the opportunity to stay in business. And so there are some companies that small businesses can join, such as Uber Eats, Postmates, Etsy, and Shopify, which are directed at like small business owners as a way to transition their business online so consumers can access them more easily. But the downside of that is that they usually take a huge chunk of profits from these companies, and they also don't really offer the space for these small businesses to advertise themselves. They're kind of all just grouped together under like the one large banner of like Etsy or like Uber Eats.
In terms of transportation, I noted here 4 trends that we found through our media scan: a push to solve the last mile delivery issue, a noted increase in roadway, sidewalk, and interstate traffic, as we all can see, a potential for pollution increases due to the additional use of transportation and delivery vehicles, as well as worker and bystander safety when it comes to delivery in general. So the last mile delivery promise and problem is the last final step of package delivery that entails getting the products to the consumer's doorstep, often from the last distribution center that the driver may leave. And the promise is expedited delivery by e-commerce platforms, specifically, Amazon or Walmart with their 1 to 2 day delivery. This problem is often exacerbated by traffic increases, making delivery to a residence difficult or lengthy, especially if it's a long trip coming from a distribution center that's, in a more rural area. If you're traveling from the Bronx to Lower Manhattan, it's going to take a little bit longer. Amazon and other large corporations are attempting to address the last mile issue with efficiency requirements, making sure that package deliveries are contracted through many different employers. Amazon also has an app called the Flex app where they allow people to deliver packages in their own personal vehicles. They're also increasing warehousing and distribution centers in areas where order rates tend to be higher. So larger cities, places like New York, Chicago. E-commerce giants like Amazon and Walmart have also done a great job at locating these facilities, like I just said, near metropolitan areas where most of their Amazon Prime subscribers are, as well as near highways, airports, waterways, places where it's easier to transport these things. Obviously, there's been an increase in traffic and congestion as there's more delivery trucks, delivery vehicles on the roads. One area that has been noted to be the most congested interchange in the nation in the last few years is the George Washington Bridge and the adjoining New Jersey Route 4 highway. Additionally, there's been a noted increase in traffic violations on regular roadways as delivery trucks try to navigate, already narrow New York City streets that are traffic ridden as it was. They often end up blocking parking spaces, idling in one area as they have to unload numerous packages for one building or an entire block. Sidewalk traffic has also intensified as they kind of have to unload these packages on the street. And yeah. So potential air pollution impacts. E-commerce companies' use of contracted delivery services means that there's more vehicles on highways and roadways rather than one huge truck. There's often many smaller Amazon trucks that you see around the city, or even individual cars of people using the Amazon Flex app or something like that. A report by the World Economic Forum was released in 2020 that states that the number of delivery vehicles in the largest 100 cities globally will increase by 36% over the next decade. And under this scenario, planet warming carbon dioxide emissions from delivery traffic could increase 32%, and congestion could increase 21% as well, which we're already sort of seeing the effects of. Warehouses and fulfillment centers and distribution centers are often also placed in communities of color and neighborhoods where industrial warehouses are plentiful. So often communities that are already struggling with these issues are set to deal with this potential additional pollution. The Bronx is a perfect example of this with its expressway. It has access to all boroughs and an industrial history with buildings that could easily be utilized for warehouses, fulfillment centers, etc.
So, as Emily mentioned earlier, air pollution as a result of e-commerce often has disproportionate impacts on communities of low income or communities of color. And so like this is because traditional trucks utilize diesel, which release like particulates into the air, and health studies have shown that these like air pollution particulates can affect the respiratory system in negative ways by like worsening or even like introducing the onset of diseases such as asthma, like making allergies worse, bronchitis, and lung function. And one like particularly horrible example is Mott Haven, which is a neighborhood in South Bronx, or as its residents like to call it, Asthma Alley, because it's a community that's made up of primarily Black and Hispanic / Latinx residents. And they live right next to a Fresh Direct warehouse. You can see like on the guy's tag on his shirt, it says Fresh Direct. And so every day, like Fresh Direct trucks will like go in and out of the warehouse. And so like the community there faces a large amount of air pollution, which means that like asthma hospitalizations in that neighborhood are 5 times the national average and 21 times higher than other New York City neighborhoods. And what's like especially insidious about this case is that like a lot of the residents have said that like Fresh Direct serves neighborhoods in Manhattan, Brooklyn, or gentrified parts of Brooklyn, neighborhoods that are more affluent. And so therefore the consequences of this entire transaction are like forced upon communities like them. And the Bronx is one of the worst cases because a lot of e-commerce companies love putting their warehouses in the Bronx. It's a lot closer than New Jersey or other boroughs. And there are 10 connections to Manhattan, only one of which charges the toll. And there are obviously like some ways in which this can be mitigated through like the introduction of EV vehicles, but technology for that hasn't been developed enough to be mass produced. And so for now, like it's important that we recognize the disproportionate consequences of e-commerce on these communities and sort of the deliberation between community residents, because some of the residents in Mott Haven have also applauded Fresh Direct and other warehouses as a source of jobs for the community, even at the expense of like community health. And so with that, there's been a wider push for sustainability efforts in transportation. Etsy, which I'm sure you guys have all gone online or visited before, is an American e-commerce website that helps small business owners sell their like handmade or vintage items and craft supplies. And so they recognize that shipping and transportation is responsible for 98% of their carbon impact. And so they've announced zero emissions shipping by offsetting their carbon impact by purchasing power from like wind and solar resources. IKEA has also done the same because like again, like IKEA's like home delivery service is one of the largest factors when it comes to their carbon footprint. FedEx and Ryder have teamed up to include electric vans in their fleet, but FedEx is only one transportation company. There's UPS, and also Amazon, who clearly could do better. And speaking of Amazon, there's also Amazon's climate pledge, which was this pledge put forth in 2019 that other companies can join in on. And they aim to achieve a net zero carbon emissions by 2040. And they have like a whole set of guidelines where they expect companies to be transparent about their policies regarding like their carbon emissions, the ways in which they plan on cutting those down. But it's unclear like how they're holding these companies responsible or how they themselves hold like their own company responsible. And like it's unclear where they publish that information about how far they're getting along when it comes to this pledge.
Okay, so worker and bystander safety when it comes to transportation, an emphasis on efficient service has led to definitely an increase in accidents when it comes to delivery vehicles and contracted delivery employees. So an investigation by ProPublica identified more than 60 accidents since June 2015 involving Amazon delivery contractors that resulted in many serious injuries, including 10 deaths. And that was done in 2019. Amazon as a company also will not assume liability or responsibility for accidents that may happen involving a contracted delivery driver and a bystander. So all employees of contracted companies are made to sign liability waivers, indicating that they're personally responsible for any damage, loss, or death that may occur during a delivery accident while on a contracted job for Amazon. The increase of delivery vehicles on the road, the demand for rapid delivery, and the lack of workplace safety and employee support creates an unsafe environment for both workers and bystanders.
So when it comes to material waste and sustainability of e-commerce, like traditionally the problem of material waste was put on retailers because retailers have a financial incentive to recycle. And previously, before the rise of e-commerce, retailers could recycle around 90 to 100% of their cardboard, whereas consumers, because they don't really have a financial incentive to recycle, and they're often unaware of recycling rules, such as like, you got to strip the tape off the cardboard box where you put it in recycling, top out at around 25% nationally. And that's not even touching on plastic. And so plastic makes up a large part of packaging waste, like the air bubbles that you have to prevent your items from being broken, or like those plastic bubble mailers. Those things are largely unrecyclable, and so less than 14% of the 86 million tons plastic packaging produced globally each year is recycled. And these plastics are made of polyethylene or vinyl, and they're single use, which means like they're used once, thrown away, and they end up like in the environment where they make their way up the food chain. And since, like, as we all know, like a lot of these pollutants, they concentrate at the top of food pyramids. And so within humans, studies have shown that these plastics have negative impacts on like developing humans inside the womb. And they can also disrupt the endocrine system, which has like negative effects on human growth and development. And so there are centers for plastic recycling, but they usually are hard to find or don't really do a good job at recycling.
And then the last thing we wanted to discuss were markets for combating e-commerce waste. So many companies have sort of come out of the e-commerce market that attempt to like eliminate or consolidate waste for consumers or producers. So they often act as like a go-between to collect goods and deliver multiple things to one household at the same time from different companies. Or they have contracts with companies to supply sustainable packaging. So they're usually subscription-based for the consumer or the business that they're working with. A couple of examples: Repack offers reusable packaging in many different sizes, and I believe many different kinds of packaging intended for corporation use and warehouse packaging that they supply to warehouses, and then consumers can then return back to producers through sort of like a drop-off system. Olive is also a free platform for consumers that charges producers, and they consolidate deliveries with a 10% commission from retailers. So they consolidate deliveries from multiple different places and then make one large delivery to a household a week. So if they're ordering groceries from one place, things from another place, they travel to different distribution centers and sort of just consolidate everything. Amazon Second Chance also offers recycling advice and return services in exchange for Amazon gift cards.
Going on about Amazon Second Chance, if you go on like the Amazon Second Chance website, they have like little pictures of like the different types of packaging that they use and advice on how to recycle it. But oftentimes that advice largely is please check with like your local city guidelines on how to recycle. And while that is like pretty vague and not very helpful at all, the one good thing about Amazon Second Chance is that they do offer services where you can ship back like electronics that you don't want anymore or have broken, and they'll give you like gift cards in exchange. But it offers sort of a pipeline for consumers to recycle electronic waste, which also is a huge problem because a lot of times those things end up in landfills where they leak chemicals and toxic metals into the environment.
All right, and that's our presentation.
Thank you so much, Emily and Sunny, for an excellent job. Terrific. Just for time's sake, I know that Galilea is the next person up, and she's short on time. Will you have time to talk, Galilea, or I can refer to?
Yeah, I actually don't have time to talk because we're running like very behind schedule. But I just wanted to say that the presentation is like part of a program. It was called Design Your City, and we basically just worked with like professionals in the field, and we made solutions to problems that were in our neighborhoods. So the place that we chose is Flushing Creek. Yeah, so that was like the problem. And I can send the presentation if you want, which has like a little bit more information on it, but unfortunately I do have to go.
Well, thank you, Galilea, and this is excellent work. We'll people can look through it, and if they have any questions, can they contact you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, because she's been doing some wonderful work in Flushing Creek. And this has actually been part of one of her internships that that she's gotten through the Magner Center, through Dr. Lee. We thank who's joining us today. Okay, let's go on. Hi, the next person we have up on the for our presentation is Billy Ray and Yomilka. So I believe Billy Ray is here. Billy Ray, I give you co-host permission if you'd like to take on the show?
Yes.
That would be great.
I will screen share. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Or I can do it through my screen, whatever's easy for you.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see my screen?
I'm not
Or no?
seeing it, Billy Ray.
Yes, I see it.
Maybe
I see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
let me try to share.
I see it.
Hmm?
You see it?
We can
You
see
see
it.
it. So it's my
Okay.
connection that's the problem. Okay, I might be having a bandwidth problem. So I'll let you go ahead, Billy.
Okay. Sorry. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Billy Ray Johnson, and I graduated from the Urban Sustainability Program in December. I currently intern for the Science and Resilience Institute at Jamaica Bay. So Yomilka, who is also a recent graduate of the Urban Sustainability Program, interns there with me. but she couldn't be here today, so I'll be presenting for the both of us. Today, I'm going to be talking about a project that Emilka and I have been working on with the team through the Science and Resilience Institute at Jamaica Bay, which is trying to help coastal neighborhoods deal with increasing sunny day flooding from climate change. First, I'll introduce you to the project, then I'll discuss various kinds of publicly engaged science and where this project fits in. And then finally, I'll discuss some of the findings from our project and end with some ideas for what comes next with this work. Okay. So firstly, what is the FloodNet project? It is a pilot flood monitoring program project that encompasses technology and community engagement. This community engagement aspect of the project has to do with involving the community in data collection by creating reports where they take photos of each flooding event, and then they go to our website and upload along with detailed information such as location and appropriate depth. This information is then saved and is used to predict how climate change will look in the future. The technology aspect of the project is present in the placement of water level sensors in the target communities that complement the photo reports. And the idea of our project was to combine those community flood reports with new flood sensors and to encourage more engagement with the Hamilton Beach community through workshops to identify the things that could best help them adapt to changing climate. So our research question is, how might flood sensors help coastal communities adapt to climate change? An example of this would be more frequent flooding. So the project combines an existing effort called Flood Watch with new simple flood sensors and expanded community engagement into one pilot neighborhood, which is Hamilton Beach. Oops. There we go. Okay, you can see them on the map. Some background on Flood Watch is it began as a community flood reporting tool with New York Sea Grant. The idea of our project was to combine those community flood reports with new flood sensors and more engagement with the Hamilton Beach community through workshops to identify the things that can best help them adapt to the changing climate. So at the moment, FloodNet has sensors in Hamilton Beach, which you can see pinned on the map, but other communities have expressed interest in our project, such as Canarsie, City Island, Rockaway, Seagate, and Coney Island. Hamilton Beach has been struggling with chronic sunny day flooding, which is not caused by a storm, but rather the gravitational pull of the moon, which makes it occur several times a month. And the photo on the right is an example of sunny day flooding. Okay. So now we're going to move on to terminology. So during our internship, we worked on a few documents to help with our community engagement. The first was the terminology document. So traditionally, the standard scientific approach in research is typically top-down. It is led by experts, which in turn can influence policy, completely denying community members to be a part of it. Civic science, citizen science, and community science are alternatives to the system, and they all have defining characteristics. Terminology is very important because it can define our presence and dynamic to the community, and our work began first by situating our project within the larger conversations about publicly engaged science. So what is civic science? It is the counseling of experts by community members on complex issues such as climate change. It is interdisciplinary because it couples Western scientific knowledge with local and indigenous knowledge, agendas, needs, and concerns. It aims at making science more democratic by including marginalized groups such as women and indigenous people, and it restores public trust in science and can go beyond research by policy advising to decision makers. Then we have community science, which immerses the community in every aspect of the research so they can decide how it's run. And finally, we have citizen science, which is a partnership with experts. And they typically only participate in data collection with the experts, while the experts do everything else. Our project falls under citizen science due to the participant reports, but we're seeking to move toward community science. And in this photo, this green rod, that's a picture of our sensors that we use to monitor flooding, and it measures the water level within a time interval of 5 minutes. So in addition to figuring out how we fit in terms of terminology, we also had to figure out how to do meaningful community engagement during the pandemic. And we thought a lot about it, how to do this as effectively and conscientiously as possible in a virtual format. So community engagement is described as the process of working collaboratively with relevant partners who share common goals and interests. This involves building authentic partnerships, including mutual respect and active, inclusive participation, power sharing and equity, mutual benefit, or finding the win-win possibility in collaborative initiative. The highlight of community engagement is the relational dynamics between participants and parties outside of it. There needs to be a mutual engage in the distribution of power where the needs of the community are considered to be as other parties. Community engagement has 3 social goals. Those include community participation, community consultation, and a collaborative partnership. The other goals of community engagement include achieving long-term and sustainable outcomes, education, relationships, discourse, decision-making, or implementation. So normally community engagement takes place in person through meetings, workshops, events, programs, and projects. However, due to the current circumstances caused by COVID-19, the way community engagement is being accomplished is changing. And we've acclimated to this change through virtual engagement. So virtual engagement involves various online technologies such as video conferencing, social media, and other digital platforms. Common platforms or tools for virtual engagement include webinars, video conferencing, live chat, live polling, video breakout rooms, virtual whiteboards, and collaborative online workspaces such as Microsoft Teams and Google Drive. An important point to remember with all forms of community engagement is access and equity, which is especially essential when promoting community engagement virtually. So when promoting access and equity, it is important to use a variety of platforms when seeking community input. When hosting these events, it is also crucial to be intentional and to have a targeted outreach. The audience should be a true representation of the community and have a variety of people differing in race, gender, age, class, and ability. However, an important limitation to consider when using virtual engagement is a shortage of technical resources such as computers and broadband access, which can create a digital divide and limit engagement for some of the most vulnerable people, such as low-income people, people of color, elderly, and other important community members from accessing complex technological engagement. Virtual engagement can further exclude groups that are often left out of the conversation due to technological, internet, language, or schedule barriers. An example of how to overcome this would be to consider how to incorporate closed captioning, translation services, or to have meetings in multiple languages to allow for inclusivity in the virtual space. There are also several more broad ways of overcoming resource limitations and closing the digital gap. The first is to improve one-on-one support, is to provide one-on-one support for the people you're trying to reach prior to the event. Next, you could provide other forms of community outreach, such as phone banking, teleconferencing, mail surveys, text or paper outreach. And you could also provide surveys in multiple languages. It's important to be the microphone and not the voice for the community during virtual events, and to focus on vulnerable populations and to be a platform for their stories. Collaborate with the community and ask them which forms of engagement work best for them. Two workshops on February 20th. We used Mentimeter, which is an app that can survey the audience in real time on Zoom, allowing us to get feedback. Within both groups, there seemed to be a strong interest in being more prepared for flood events. The survey also shows the most participants seemed interested in receiving flood warning info through text and email. Community members also expressed their frustration because it seemed like all of the flooding and attention was going to Manhattan and not any of the outer boroughs where the portion of the working class resided. And lastly, they expressed a strong interest in having a greater number of sensors so the data could be a little more individualized rather than communal. So what's next for FloodNet? In communities, people from Hamilton Beach to Rock don't know yet if other communities around Jamaica Bay would find this helpful. The plan is to help Hamilton, the Rockaways, and Seagate connect with sensors and to repeat and improve community engagement process to figure out what other communities need to adapt to sunny day flooding. Other communities who may be interested include City Island and Canarsie. We would also like to engage elected officials in order to draw more attention to the problem so the people with resources can provide aid and solutions to these communities. Furthermore, we plan to provide informational guides to make it easier for community members to engage elected officials. Another step we want to take is to evolve from citizen science to community science beyond the collection and give them more agency over the sun to look in the future. And thanks for listening.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm having some connectivity issues. I hope everyone, I couldn't hear some of it, so I apologize, but wonderful. Thank you so much. Clap a round of applause for all of you. Let's just to keep on time, because I know some students again have to are on a tight schedule. So if you have any questions, post them in chat. And for those who can stay at the end, we can have a discussion with the students who are here. Otherwise we can communicate with them. So wonderful. Thank you for all of your presentations. So we have the next presentation is going to be with Frank Chellis. Frank, I've given you co-host privileges. I think you are on. Yes, you are on here. So, or make you co-host. Let me make sure you are a co-host. I've given you co-host privileges. Do you want to show your presentation through your video or through your website, or have me? If you can, it might be better through you. I'm having some connectivity issues.
Yeah, I'll share my screen and I'll show it through my.
Okay, I gave you co-host privileges. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So just a little context.
It's all you.
Yeah, I'm a current urban sustainability student in environmental sociology, and before I came to Brooklyn College, I had a sculptural and sound art practice for many years in a studio in Bushwick. And part of what I'm doing here at the college is figuring out how to best implement conversations of environmental sociology, urban sustainability into my existing art practice. And so here is the presentation.
Okay, Frank.
Yeah, there's no sound.
Okay, what you need to do, unshare your screen. And then when you share, make sure at the bottom, there's an option for video and sound. Make sure that that is clicked, and then share it again and start over, because we're not getting the sound. Do you see that option at the bottom?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you could start again, that would be lovely.
Okay, take two. So as art is about starting conversations, I was hoping that maybe there would be some questions after the video. If not, I can just talk as well.
Well, we have a few minutes. Does anyone have a question? Or questions to Frank? Okay, I'll read. We have some coming from the chat, so let me read them off to you. Ian's asking, where's the stick from?
The stick is, it's kind of funny, somebody that I knew gave it to me, and they said to me, they were like, oh, you're an artist? I figure you could do something with this. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll take it. It was just like a stick from somebody's yard. So that's where the stick is
And
from.
are all,
Say that again?
oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you another question, kind of related to it. Sorry. Are all the sounds made by just a violin?
Yeah, so all the sounds are made by the 5 nails that I have in the violin, and then I have 1 string on it. And the nails in the last shot of the video is a tree, and the nails are from my childhood treehouse that used to be in that tree. So there's a lot of, there's a through line of reuse in the project as well.
Awesome. And the musical, what musical influences do you have?
My musical influences, I guess maybe an obvious one is John Cage, prepared pianos specifically. D'Angelo, I think, is a musical genius. Tom Waits might also be obvious to certain listeners.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, just a whole host of others.
Wonderful. And was the thing on your thumb part of the music production?
Yeah, so the thing on my thumb is, I don't actually even know exactly what that is. It's just something from my garage, but it's a slide for the string, basically, so I don't have to like pluck it. I can bow it instead. I can slide around. And all of the sounds go through 1 loop pedal, so I can save phrases and they play continuously.
Wonderful. Well, we will hold off there. We'll let the last presenter give his presentation, and then those of you who can stay around, we can have a conversation after Ian gives his presentation. So thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you.
Ian, my bandwidth is not great. So can you, I think I gave you co-host. If you can do, let me make sure. Yes, Ian, are you good for sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can share the screen.
Okay. I'll let you introduce yourself, Ian, and your project.
Okay, great. My name is Ian Evans. I'm a graduating senior from the Urban Sustainability Department. I'm minoring in health and nutrition. I made a quick little video about my backyard chickens. Also a little bit more about myself. After I graduate, I plan on focusing more on my nonprofit work. And over the course of the pandemic, I've actually been teaching some backyard urban farming classes. And yeah, that was kind of hard to like catch on video. So I just did like a little tour for you guys. So let me get the link up so you guys can watch the video.
Oh, and remember when you share your screen at the bottom to check the maximizing video, maximizing audio. Okay.
Okay, hold on. I got the video up. All right, let me start sharing the screen. Okay, does everyone see? Wait, hold on. Yes. Okay.
Thumbs up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ian. Does everyone hear that? All right. Let me know if there's any problems in the chat. Welcome to Yimby Farm. She's a rescue bunny that I found in the wetlands.
I just gotta record this. Oh.
Yimby Farm is located in Brooklyn, New York, and we want to connect local residents back to their food system by teaching them about urban farming and showing them how easy it is to grow their own food, even if they don't have a lot of space. Our top priority is to increase food security throughout the borough. Brooklyn contains the highest number of individuals living with food insecurity compared to any other borough. 18% of the residents are food insecure. The pandemic has only made matters worse. As people have lost their jobs and food pantries have run out of funding, people are suffering more and more from food insecurity. Just like in the Great Depression. To combat the food insecurity of the time, people started doing victory gardens, and this was when they grew whatever food they could on whatever space was available. These gardens produced 40% of the produce consumed in New York City. Yimby Farm hopes to bring this tradition back to New York City and get New Yorkers growing food in their backyards. We hope one day all New Yorkers will have chickens in their backyards. No!
She wants in.
No, stop it.
Let her in.
Chickens are a great companion to any urban garden. Chickens are amazing animals because they have an amazing work ethic. Chickens will scratch around all day, every day. They're looking for bugs and other microorganisms, especially worms. If they find the worm, they're really stoked for the day. So, a reason why chickens are great, besides their amazing work ethic, is that in this small space, they're able to build compost for us. And this compost is amazing for the gardens. So let's get down and look at this compost. So underneath this layer of hay that hasn't broken down yet, you can see they're building up amazing topsoil here. Look at that. So for the 4 years I've had my chickens, I haven't had to buy dirt for any of my garden beds. I've just been using the compost that the chickens have been building to fill up my garden beds for the past 4 years. Let's take a look at the chicken sleeping arrangements. So this is what we in the farm business call the coop. So I made they sleep on branches because they're birds basically, and they don't like to sleep on the ground because they don't feel safe there. And at night they'll jump up and they'll perch up. Usually they like to go up to the highest perch that they can. And also inside of the coop, they lay their eggs in their nest boxes. So I have 4 nest boxes for my 7 chickens, and that's plenty of space for them. So typically they'll lay all their eggs in 1 nest box, even though they have the space to lay in multiple boxes. All right, so I'll show you the rest of the chicken run. So the difference between a chicken run and a coop is that the run is a fenced off area that will protect from predators, both aerial and land. And the coop is fully weatherproofed, so they have a safe place to sleep at night. So no predators or rain or snow or anything bad will get on the chickens while they're sleeping at night. So let's tour the rest of the chicken run as I give them the rest of their breakfast. And the reason I throw their food on the ground is to encourage them to scratch up the compost more. All right, so at the center of our chicken run is a rabbit hutch. Now this is my rabbit Laylick. She's a rescue bunny that I found in the wetlands, and she's not like the wild rabbits that live out in the wetlands. She's clearly a domesticated rabbit, and she ran up to me and my friends that fateful night we found her. So there she is, a great neighbor to the chickens. She's very quiet and doesn't bother the chickens, and the chickens don't bother her. This structure behind me looks like a greenhouse, but it's not a greenhouse. It's actually technically a hoop house. The only difference between a hoop house and a greenhouse is a hoop house is unheated. A hoop house is great for us here in Brooklyn because, as we know, we tend to get some cold winters and even cold springs. This garden bed over here, this is made out of 100% recycled materials. So this is made out of wood from pallets. Garden beds made out of pallets are great and an amazing, quick way for anyone to start their own garden. My nonprofit organization, the Environmental Action Lab, has made 6 community garden beds out of pallets, and we plan on building so many more garden beds this summer out of wood from pallets. These are garden beds that are located right on the sidewalk. This bed has been ravaged by climate change. We planted these seeds directly in the ground when the weather was nice, but then we got that cold spell that absolutely wrecked the garden. And even yesterday was pretty cold. On Earth Day, I think it was like, what, 40 degrees or something like that? Street garden beds are great. They give people who don't have a backyard an opportunity to grow right in the space of the community. Anyone who needs food can grab from here. And people ask me, Ian, do you worry about people taking your vegetables when they're on the side of the street? If you're taking my vegetables from the side of the street, you need them more than me, and please take them.
Thank you so much, Ian. So questions for Ian or any of the students. A round of applause to all of the students who presented today. Thank you so much. Such a variety of different projects, different style of presentations. So really showing the diversity of ways of the types of work that urban sustainability students are doing. And all of you, in one way or other, connected those 3 pillars of sustainability and looking at justice, equity, and environment. So wonderful, wonderful work. So any questions for Ian, or let's see what other students are here. I know that some had to leave. Frank is still here, and Billy Ray and Emily is still here. So we have a number of students here that we can you can ask questions. Is someone trying to speak? I can't quite hear. Well, I'll ask a question, Ian, since you're alive. When did you first start getting interested in urban farming?
So I'd say I was interested in urban farming about like 2014. And yeah, I think it was like a senior in high school. And I just found like it was a good way to spend my time. And the more gardening videos I watched on YouTube, they just started recommending me chicken videos. And I'm just like, oh, chickens are pretty cool. Because I like how they're like they both feed each other. Like, as you saw, they were making compost for the garden and they eat things from the garden. I just thought they were really cool. I'm just like, yeah, why not get some chickens? They're legal here. So, and my mom was very kind and let me get the chickens. So shout outs to her.
That's awesome. We have a general question for all of the students. Mariana would like to hear about, and me as well, all of us, I'm sure, would like to hear about next plans. So you're graduating, Ian. What are your next plans?
So I would like to continue doing my nonprofit work. I'm also aware that like we live in a society and like bills need to get paid. So I hope if I do have to get like a job, it'd be like for the Parks Department or something. I'm also gonna put a link to my website for my work that I'm doing if you guys want to check it out on your own time. Yeah.
Great.
Put it in chat.
Yeah, I just dropped it. And also for Kathy's question, the cold doesn't bother the rabbit because she has a thick fur. She actually prefers the cold to the heat. And kind of same thing with the chickens. They have feathers, and when winter comes, they grow down feathers, so it keeps them insulated. And the compost pile itself also provides a little bit of heat. So they actually prefer the winter over the summer.
Awesome. Awesome. Frank, Billy, or Emily, and I don't know if Sunny's here. Well, let's Billy, you have finished. What are your plans?
Okay, so whoops. I'm gonna finish out the internship that I'm doing with the flood sensors next month. And then in the fall, I want to do this thing called community semester at the CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies. So that's just like a semester long program. It like focuses on community like justice and engagement and all that stuff. And I want to get an advanced certificate in that. And then after that, I want to work in like affordable housing and helping people get affordable housing and stuff like that and help the homeless problem. So that's what I want to do.
Awesome. Awesome. And who else do we, I see some former students here, but let's see for the presenters, who else is here, Jack? Billy, I think the others may have had to leave. I don't know if is Emily. Oh, Emily, you're here. How far along are you in your program? I think.
I have about a year left. So after the internship with RPA, next semester I'm doing a Mellon transfer student research project with Professor Munoz on food justice organizations. So I'm excited about that. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is after graduation, but I've also been thinking about the community semester that Billy Ray mentioned as a possibility, but not super sure yet.
Awesome. Awesome. And Frank, you have one more semester after this, right?
Yeah, I have the fall and then I'll graduate. Plans after graduation, I am not 100% sure. I've been doing some landscape design work over the past year. So that seems like a good path for me to involve visuals and things like that. So I'm gonna explore that. But I mean, in my time in New York, I've just kind of ended up in a bunch of different places. So I kind of like that way of bouncing around as well.
Awesome. Also, it seems that I think all of you who've presented have done or are doing various internships. Would you, how did the internships influence your undergraduate degree and the direction that you took post-degree, or for those of you who have graduated and moved forth? Can you talk about the role that internships have played in your education? Anyone? Billy,
What was your
I'm
question?
going to pick
again?
on people
Sorry.
then.
Sorry, what was your question again, Professor Boger?
Well, it's the, most of you, or all of you here have done internships. And I was curious, we really promote internships at Urban, in the program of Urban Sustainability. It's not a requirement of the program, but we would like students to have internships. Having those types of experience, did it really, did it help your education? And if so, in what ways?
Definitely. I think the urban sustainability program really prepared me for my internship, especially since it didn't just focus on science or sociology or like economics. It focused on all of them. And I feel like when you get out into like your actual career and stuff, these internships along with the program like really help like fully prepare me for everything, you know.
Awesome.
And also like my internship was very helpful, like just like stuff like being professional, and like language and collaborating with a team.
Cool.
Yeah, I think
And
that,
Emily, you're go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say that our urban sustainability theory class has like the 3 modules: environmental, economic, and social. And that's been super helpful just in RPA when looking at all 3 of those aspects of e-commerce and e-commerce impacts. So I think those 2 really helped inform each other. My internship work is helping to inform my research paper for this class and vice versa. Also in agreement with Billy, just like working on things not for school, but within the same realm has been really helpful in kind of envisioning what something post-graduation would look like, a job, another internship, whatever.
That's great.
Yeah, I got to take on an internship thanks to Dr. Leibowitz, and I think that even past the point of it being something kind of wieldable once I leave these gates, something that I can show and kind of get into a field with, I think as Ian said in the chat, it's something that really you take what you've learned and you have an arena to kind of see it mold society or something like that. So it's been really beneficial, again, both practically, something that I can use, and also something that has really got me thinking in a different way and thinking, practically with the knowledge that I've learned. So thank you again, Dr. Leibowitz.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Becky, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Leibowitz as well. Hi, Dr. Leibowitz.
Hi.
I'm Mike Witzer. I teach in this program and I supervise a lot of the interns. And it's been tremendous with your support, especially the support that you're able to give. It allows students to have time to think through things in a more systematic way, but then also engage with partners and with specific sites in a much more sustained way. And that's been something that's been a big plus in watching the way that students have been able to take on these internships with your support. So really, and I look forward to meeting you face to face, eventually. But nice to see you at least on Zoom today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been, the diversity here is incredible. It's hard to believe how much diversity. It's really. I can't recognize what you're doing compared to my days, but that's a very long time ago.
Well, we have incredible students in urban sustainability. I mean, they're the problem solvers. They're good. They're going to make our world a much better place. They already are.
They really are. It's I just want to say to all the presenters, it's really impressive. Like your ability to move through, like to synthesize and integrate in a natural way that seems natural to you, the sociological, the economic, and the ecological. Like that is exactly the thing that's going to make the difference. The ability to put all of those pieces together and think of these issues holistically. And it's really impressive. And I have to say, this program was like a dream that Mike and Becky and I and a few other people had, years ago. And you have realized it for us. So like, thank you for being really incredible. And, sorry about the state of the world that we left you, but like, I feel like we've at least prepared you like to go and fix it. So thanks for that.
Yes, thanks to all. And we have several alumni with us. I recognize names. Natalie, Daisy's here, Ian's here. So it's wonderful to see you again and keeping in touch with what's going on in urban sustainability here at Brooklyn College. So we'll keep an eye out. So yeah, any other thoughts? I mean, thank you all for coming, and thank you for the students for being yourselves. What can I say? Presenting your incredible work. It certainly is inspirational to us all. Well, just the kind of thing I would like to Ian and Sibs. Thank you. Yeah. So I guess, these presentations are going to be available on the Urban Sustainability website. And feel free to reach out to us if you want to learn more about what the students are doing or have any questions. Reach out to any of us, but as a director, I might be able to lead you to different people who can answer your questions. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Great job.